Welcome back. So my hubby and my main day job is in construction. My husband is fabricating some cast concrete columns and wanted to make sure that he has the spacing correct in case we added a finial later. We looked around a lot to order this online and we could not find the size we wanted, so we started thinking about possibly 3D printing it. We stumbled across this file on Thingiverse. It's a Pinecone Finial by P-Muse. We're not completely sure what's going to be the end product for this, but we just needed a mock-up or something so that we could get the spacing right. So 3D printing it was the way to go. Everything online that we could order was going to be months out. This I can hopefully knock out on my Prusa XL pretty quickly. So I downloaded the file and switched it over to the Prusa XL. As you can see, the original file is pretty small. And as you guys know, my pretty default go-to is 0.32 speed for the layer height. This file is beautiful. It's very detailed. I think it's going to be exactly what we're looking for this mock-up, but I don't know that I want that base. So I'm going to go ahead and slice that base off, especially because I want to print this fairly large. So I'm a little worried that that's not going to quite work. So I slice that off and delete the base. I'm not interested in that right now. Okay, now I have a better idea of the overall size of this. It's a little under 3 inches tall. I'm thinking that we're going to want to, of course, scale this up. And usually I do print kind of like a test print first, but we're a little bit on a time crunch, so I'm going to go ahead and scale this up to what we think it is. We're going to go with 11 by 11 by 9 inches. That ends up being about 280 by 280 by 230 millimeters. And I'm very happy that this newer slicer has the option to switch to inches because that is what I'm looking for. I don't have to worry about converting it as much as I used to. It's a lot easier for me. Okay, so with default speeds, default infill, I'm looking at 1 day and almost 19 hours. I do not have the time or patience for this, so let's try to speed this up. I'm going to jump into infill and I'm going to drop it from 20% to 10, and the default grid, I'm going to switch to lightning. I have used this many times and I am very happy with lightning. Okay, so with just those few changes, I'm at about 16.5 hours. I think that'll work. Let's go ahead and get this printing. Because this is just the first mock-up, I'm going to go ahead and use PLA. I use Overture White in just about everything, the PLA. I know that that's not going to be the end product, but I'm very comfortable with it. I want to see if I see any kind of defects in the white, and PLA is easy to print, so that's what I'm going with. Okay, this print is finished. Let's see how it turned out. I knew from the slicer that I had kind of squished it. I made it a little shorter and a little bit fatter than the original print. But I wanted to see how that would work, especially with these leaf overhangs. And at this layer height, I think they look really good. I mean, the inside is pretty much hollow, but I'm surprised at how good this looks. The top is a little bit smushed more than I thought, but that's kind of just how the plan turned out. Underneath looks great. It printed pretty good. You can see a little bit of overhang or sagging really on the base of those leaves. You see a little bit there. I feel like that may be where, not a seam, but where it starts. The other sides looked pretty good. So I think this will work. My hubby's going to take this to work and see if it's the right size. At least in my experience with 3D printing, you're never done on the first print. So here I am going back in and adjusting the size. We do like the way that it looks. So I'm going to adjust this a little bit. I'm going to go back to 100% on all of them, and then I'm going to scale it out a little differently. So I wanted to keep the original size, but I wanted the overall height to be 14 inches. So I kind of went back through all the scales, did 100, and then I scaled the final Z to be 14 inches tall, or about 355 millimeters. This is going to be about 21 hours, so let's go ahead and get this thing printing. I'm very anxious to see how this is going to turn out. I did also switch it to PETG, but I didn't change any other settings. It's still the 10% infill and the lightning infill. So as you see this starting to print, it's again looking very hollow on the base, and then as it gets to the very end, it should fill in. So I live in Central Texas, and usually in the spring we have some crazy storms, not really in the beginning of summer, but as this was printing, we started getting a crazy storm, and I happened to be in the house and I noticed that the lights flashed twice. So we had lights and we had just like the tiniest bit of like black, the lights on black. And immediately I thought, oh my God, I need to go check that print. We were right at about halfway through. I want to say that it was right 10 hours or so, and I came out and there's nothing. There's no screen going on. It's acting like nothing happened, and the extruder is stuck. So I don't know if there is a good power save in this scenario, but I think between both of those, the 2 rounds, the printer just couldn't handle it. We were extremely disappointed because this was right at, I want to say 6:30 p.m. and we were expecting this print to be done before work tomorrow. So now we're trying to decide what to do. Can we slice the difference and make it up? But for the mock-up that we wanted, we didn't really want a line on the side. And then I start worrying, are we going to be able to slice it perfectly? Yes, we have calipers and we can measure it, but I got a little paranoid that there's no way I can make that happen to make it line up just right, especially as hollow as it is. I'm so disappointed, but this is a Prusa XL. So let's see what other things we can do to make this go faster so that we can still have it ready tomorrow. The first thing is going to be heating up the nozzle because as you can see as I lower the bed, it is stuck. So not only do I now have a print that's not working, I can't even get it off the nozzle. So I'm going to go ahead and heat up the nozzle, and while that's going, I'm going to look in Prusa Slicer and see what I can come up with to make this faster. I already have lightning infill, so what else can I do? And here's a little snippet of the storm in the background without the volume off so you can hear how crazy this is to try to think while this is happening. Okay, so I'm in Prusa Slicer and I'm trying to think what I can do. I already have a 0.6 nozzle, that's the default. What if I up the 0.32 speed default layer height to 0.4? How much is that going to help? I was at about 21 hours, now I'm at about 20 hours. So 1 hour is not going to help enough. I really need this done tomorrow. So I start thinking about the nozzle height. 0.6 is the default. That's what I use for pretty much everything. But I do have a 0.8 nozzle. I did order it. I already have it. So let's go ahead and switch to that and see if there's some other settings in that nozzle size that I can speed things up. So when I switch to this other nozzle size, it does still show a 0.4 as an option, but there's an even taller layer height option. There's a 0.55 draft for the 0.8 nozzle height. So of course I'm going to try that out and see how that helps with the overall time frame to get this printed. Okay, so by swapping to that, I'm at just under 17 hours. This is a comparison of the 2 speeds. We do quick math of by the time I switch the nozzle and get this thing printing, we should be done with the print at about noon tomorrow. So that's going to work. That's as fast as I can come up with that I'm comfortable with doing. I've never used this nozzle size. I've never gone on this layer height. It makes me very nervous, but I still feel more comfortable with that option than that slice where we had stopped it. So I would rather go ahead with this print. Also, while we're doing this, hubby is thinking that we probably want to go ahead and have the base as well. So there's no way that I can print this on the Prusa XL, but it is a smaller size. So why don't I go ahead and get that printing also on the Mark IV? It's going to fit, And because overall this is going to be about 10 hours, I don't have to worry too much about the layer height. I do switch it to the lightning as well. And because again, this is just a mock-up, this is just a prototype, but this should work for the overall amount of filament. And let's see if we can get these printed together. Okay, so both of these are printing with PETG by the Overture filament. It is a rock PLA. But because I messed up on the first one, on the XL with that storm, I'm a little nervous about having enough filament. I'm thinking first thing in the morning around 8 a.m., once the base is done, I'm going to have to pull that filament and swap it onto the other one. And because I'm paranoid and I want this to work so much, I go ahead and turn the filament sensor on the XL back on so that if it runs out of filament, then it's not going to destroy the print. It'll just pause for me. But this turns out to be a terrible idea. This rock or marble filament has a base color with kind of flecks in it, and I have not had issues with it on my other printers, but of course on the XL when I'm, down to the wire, I have the filament sensor on, it has issues. A few hours into printing, the XL thinks that it no longer has filament, so it pauses. It clearly has plenty of filament, but it goes into this change filament mode and pauses for hours. This is overnight. I happen to wake up a few hours later, it's about 1 in the morning, and I think the storm woke me up again, and I check the printers for no reason. I check the camera and I see it's not moving. So I hurry up and go out there and see what's going on. And I know immediately what is happening. The filament sensor stopped working, or just happened to fail me in this instance. I go through the process and reload the filament, and then the good thing that I am so grateful for is there is a way in the menu, even during the middle of the print, that I'm able to turn the filament sensor off. So I'm a little nervous about still running out of filament in the very early morning, but now I know I'm already a couple hours behind, so I'm just going to check it when I get up first thing in the morning and hope that by turning the sensor off, it's not going to have some weird fleck that's going to turn the filament sensor and think that it needs to change the filament. I check on it first thing in the morning and figure out how much is left of the filament. I do want to keep going with this amount because the amount that was left after the base on the Mark IV was not really enough to leave it all morning. So I feel like I'm going to be done, rather than being done at noon, now I'm going to be done at probably about 3 o'clock. And so I go ahead and let it continue running at this, and I actually weigh the amount that was left and figure out how much I think it is. It's going through about 50 grams per hour. So I figure, okay, I need to be home at about 11 o'clock to check on this and do the swap. I do also have Caitlin there that day, so she's able to run some other prints on the Mark IV and just kind of keep an eye on it for me. Let me know that there's no errors, there's no crazy pauses, and just kind of keep an eye on the filament because, again, my sensor is off, and I just plan to stop back in and check it. So my timing for once works out. You can see how low I got. There was a little bit of a layer left, one single line all the way across the filament, which I would say is great timing. So I swapped the filament. You can see it go from black to the brown cardboard roll. Of course, it is still the same Overture PETG in the rock, I call it marble. It's the same filament, so hopefully there won't be any change in the overall print from swapping between those two filaments. Even though they have a different outside roll, they should be the exact same color. Okay, so just before the day is out, this print finishes. I wanted to show a little bit of the detail on the base that's printed on the Mark IV. This is, of course, with a 0.4 nozzle, and I think it looks really good. You have the solid color with a little bit of the flakes in it, and it printed really smooth. I don't really see any of the layer lines in it. I'm looking for a seam, and as I turn it, I do start to see a little bit. It's not an aligned seam, so it's kind of, you can see it a little bit there. It's pretty smooth where the seam is. Underneath looks really smooth. The top layer looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this base. Okay, and now for the 14-inch tall Pinecone Finial. Of course, it's going to be taller once I put the base on it. So I'm really at first looking for a little bit of color shift from switching the filament or even a line, and I don't see that. I don't see any change in the filament. I think overall it looks pretty good. On the underside, on these leaves, I am seeing a little bit of sagging, more than I was hoping for, but honestly I'm kind of not surprised for as much as it's rushed. It seems like all of these little bit deeper leaves did it, and on the very underside, the little bit of sagging I'd seen before is a little bit more pronounced. A little bit smaller leaves don't really have a lot of bridging sagging. It looks like those are pretty good. It looks pretty good for what we were wanting, and I'm so glad that the print finished. On top it looks a little bit funny with the overall layers, but that was to be expected. It is very lightweight overall, which again I'm not surprised by. Okay, so now let's put it all together. With the base, it's about 18.5 inches tall, which is about 470 millimeters, so it is pretty impressive overall together. We did get it in time to make sure that our sizing is correct, and it's going to buy us a little bit of time to figure out how we are going to finish out that area, but we have what we needed. I'm so glad that I was able to print this in a matter of a couple days. We didn't have to worry about ordering something and waiting months for it to come in and possibly not being the right size to begin with. Let me know your thoughts on this Pinecone Finial, and let me know in the comments below if you had a similar experience where you were able to make something with the printer that you were not able to get in time. Thanks for watching.